Hello, everyone. I hope you all have been having a good week so far. It's me, Andrew. I'm here at Star Cottage Studio in lovely Ligonier. It was a little bit of a cloudy, overcast day today here. I had hoped to go outside and get some stuff done out in the yard, but that'll have to wait until the weather improves a little bit. Yeah. So hopefully you all are doing well out there. If you didn't see last night's live, William went live and showed a recap of what is available in the of the lampwork glass beads that we just showed. We also showed some pieces that we had kind of bypassed. We also showed some lampwork glass beads from my personal collection. So if you did not get a chance to see that or to claim, head on over maybe after this video to the video from last night and check that out. It was a little bit of a different time slot. So some people were like, oh, I don't like the new time slot, or I love the new time slot. And it's not an official change, but we're kind of playing around and seeing if we can see and hang out with different folks sometimes, or more people. It's one of those things where we're testing the waters. We listen to all of you out there. Some of you say that you never get to watch the lives live because you're still at work. So we're trying to do some things so we can hang out with all of you. And that it's and we never see. I see a couple people have tuned in. If you're watching, say hello. Maybe say where you're from. I always love to see who's watching. June's watching. Hey, June. Norma's watching. Hey, Norma. Marianne's watching. Hey, Marianne. Marianne says, we had thunderstorms this morning and may get some tonight and tomorrow too. Well, hopefully everybody stays safe. It's and a lot of places need rain right now. We're one of them. So even though I like bright sunny days, I understand that we need rain. So I'm not going to complain when we've got it. Amanda's watching. Hey, Amanda. So yeah. So speaking of Amanda wrote into us at info@allegorygallery.com, and she requested that I showed a technique on how to incorporate eyelets into leather and possibly into metalwork. So I said, okay, I know how to do that. We can do that. Before I got on today, I was kind of rustling everything up, and hopefully you all will enjoy that. I can't do everything sometimes. There's certain limitations within my own expertise, and there's also sometimes I don't have the right setup to show things. And sometimes I like to keep things not necessarily to myself, because I really do believe in the sharing of information, but sometimes I'm not ready yet to share certain processes. And part of that is because if I don't really know all the ins and outs of it, and then also the other kind of roadblock is if I take a class and it's somebody else's information, I don't really necessarily feel comfortable sharing that without permission from the instructor. So there are a few limitations on the total request live kind of thing. But with that being said, there's a lot that I can show. And so I'm going to attempt to do that, especially now since I'm on more, because used to I was only on 1 day a week. So it was a little bit tricksy to go and, show stuff and keep track of everything. But anyways, I'm going to try and do my best to help people out if they have questions or need help or are curious about certain things. And yeah. All right, I see a couple more folks have tuned in. Karen's watching. Hey, Karen. Sharon's watching. Hi, Sharon. She said it's cloudy, cold, and rainy in upstate New York. Yeah, it's pretty chilly here today as well. I'm not complaining because we went down to Memphis and it was blazing hot, y'all. I grew up in Florida, and so you'd think that I have some kind of magical skill to survive the heat, but that does not exist within me. If it did at one point in my life, it's now over. And so I was kind of melting, y'all. But it is what it is. Michelle's watching. Hi, Michelle. Amanda says, we are having weird weather too. Funnel clouds an hour west of me near London, Ontario. Oh no. Hopefully everybody stays safe out there. Michelle's watching. Did I just say that? Michelle's watching. Well, hi again, Michelle, if I just said that. Amanda says, that's so cool. I can't wait to see your eyelets tutorial. Well, hopefully you all enjoy it. I don't think I've shown this before. I may have shown this before. I can't remember. We've been doing, so just so y'all know. So we've been doing lives every weekday almost. Sometimes we've missed a couple. But almost every weekday for since 2020. So it's been we've done a lot of online content making out there. So I can't remember. Sometimes it's been so long. So you may notice in the background there's like stuff. And a part of that is that William got some kind of fancy robotic arm looking thing for the camera. And I would use it, but I don't actually know how to use it yet. So he's going to have to show me how to use it. And then we'll show you that. And I didn't want to move anything in the back in case he had it laid out in a specific way. And he's like, I was looking for them screws or whatever. I don't know. So I didn't touch it. Anyway, so that's why there's stuff in the background. If you didn't get to see, speaking of things that we've added in online content, if you didn't see on Saturday, Jen did a really cool wire wrap bail tutorial on drilled crystal points. It's pretty cool, y'all. I saw a couple of you have tried it yourself. I know Cheryl and Cindy have done some. And yeah, so if you do use that, we'd love to see. And if you like those videos, be sure to thumbs up them and share them and help spread the word about our tutorials on Saturday mornings. Because otherwise, if nobody watches them, then we'll stop doing them. But most likely, we like doing them. So hopefully people watch them and enjoy them and like and share and all that business that makes the world go round nowadays. Marianne says it's 85 just now, thumbs down. I don't know how warm or cool it is. It's probably, I would say it's in the low 70s here, maybe high 60s. It's pretty nice. I wish the sun was out, of course. But yeah, can't get everything, or at least I can't. Maybe some of y'all can. Cheryl says hello. Hi, Cheryl. And Amanda's talking about the temperature has been amazing there. That's good. And so also I know this is kind of a weird topic maybe, but I wanted to talk a little bit about something before the rumor mills get going. And so On my post, on my personal timeline today, I posted about the closure of another store. I'm not going to say what store that is because um, that's kind of their business, and I don't really want to get into it unless they ask me to share about it, which is is a different kind of that's a different kind of situation. But yeah, so there is a business, small business, bead store that's a part of our industry that's going out of business. And it's been making me think about stuff. And I've been talking to a lot of other bead store owners, and they have shared similar experiences. Every once in a while, I'll meet somebody who's like, no, no, it's like the best ever. And it's like raining money and stuff. I was like, well, oh, I don't know how. Okay, that's neat. Um, so one of the things I had mentioned in the post is that William and I talked about the possibility of closing the brick and mortar store. Um, and so, that's it's not something that we want to do. It's not something we're going to do at this moment, but it is always an option. I think whenever you have a business, it's super important to know your numbers and to be able to make decisions that best reflect your numbers and also your personal feelings towards your numbers. So, what that basically means is we've done the numbers, we've done all the calculations, and because we're currently renting in at the physical brick and mortar store, it costs 3 times as much to sell the same product as we do online. And why you're like, but it's the same price. How does that make sense? And what that basically means is that the overhead that the store generates, the physical store, is there's much more overhead in the store. So, for example, the rent at the store is over $1,000 a month. And so when you factor in the rent, the lights, utilities, the water, the internet, paying help, different things like that, it all adds up to how much of your overhead is. And then you have to deduct that from what money you make. So if I sell a tube of seed beads online, um, I make more money off of selling as opposed to selling the same exact tube of seed beads in the physical store. So we know that it costs more to run the brick and mortar store. It wasn't always like this. When we first started the store, it was actually reversed. We made more money in the physical store because our rent was pretty low at that point, and we didn't have any kind of we didn't have as much overhead expenses. And also, when we first opened the store, I don't know if some of you remember this or not, but we used to share the space with another small business. So a lot of our utilities were halved. Um, so that's one of the things. Like our overhead was pretty low in the beginning, and we had to because we didn't have any money otherwise. I don't know if y'all know the story of us opening Allegory Gallery. Um, and I won't go too much into it, but when we decided to open the store, we went to the bank. I went to the bank with my business plan, and I was super, super, super duper excited. And I'd worked really hard on it. I had done my market research and was super excited about going to the bank. We had banked with them for years and years. And so when I went there, I think it was the day of the debt ceiling decrease. I can't remember exactly, but it was around um I know it was around that time. So it was a little bit of a sketchy time to try to start to open a business. It was in the wake of the housing bubble. And so tensions were running high, y'all. Um, so anyways, so we went to the bank to get a small business loan to open the store. And they basically laughed in my face and said that no, we would be closed within 6 months, and they wouldn't give us even a penny. So yeah, that was not awesome. And so of course I'm a little bit stubborn, and I called on all of my resources, and we William, he used to work for Apple, and he cashed in his stock, which is kind of sad because back, if we would have kept that, it would have they did this thing where they split shares or whatever, and it would have been a little tidy sum. Um, but anyways, hindsight, and we wouldn't have had this store if we didn't. So I can't begrudge that decision too much. But anyway, so we cashed in his stock, and we had $10,000 between what he could get from his stocks at the time and what I could fundraise. And so, and this comes after I had a lot of debt from having cancer. So, and getting treatment for that. So we were not in a position to really do a lot. So, anyways, that's how we started our store. And so when we started our store, we had to keep our overhead low so that we could, actually do it. And any money that we made got reinvested back into the store. And we kind of grew every year um, for a good chunk of our business history. We grew 20% every year until 2020 happened. And so when that happened, things kind of shifted in our business. So, of course, there with masking and social distancing and all of that, we did not have um, we didn't have the walking traffic that we used to have. We're in a tourist community, kind of. And so we get people from all over the world who come and visit, like places like Falling Water and different places like that nearby. And they come for the fort, and it's a really beautiful place. And there are things nearby. And anyways, so we rely on that foot traffic in the in-store business to keep things going, right? So before, it was kind of an 80-20 split where we had more business in store. And so even though it costs more to have the in-store to make sales in store as it does online, we still did it because it made sense. So for us, one of the things that was kind of difficult is that we're trying to get back to normal and trying to get people to come back through the brick and mortar so that we can keep the physical store open. So on my post, I thought I made it clear that we were not going to disappear completely, but that we had considered the option of closing the brick and mortar. We're not going to, but it is an option because in reality, when you look at it, it is more expensive to run the brick and mortar than to run an online store. It's a different experience, y'all. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a different experience. We try to replicate the same things that we do in store online, but it's different. It's different when you can hold something and see something. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that because some people had taken it that I was saying that we're going to close completely. We're not going to close completely. We're not going to even close the brick and mortar store. But it is one of those things that if things don't improve, or we don't come up with a different solution, that is an option that we may have to explore. I don't necessarily want to do that, but if nobody comes in the store, then, what's the point, right? So, if our goal if our motivation to keep the physical store open is to create community and create those tight connections with people in person, and then nobody comes in, then we're not meeting our mission, and we have to make decisions based on that information. So that I just wanted to clear that up because I know that some people got concerned and they were like, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh," and I was like, "No, no, no." Um, and I was like, I don't want to be an alarmist, but that's kind of where we're at mentally right now. And I went over and talked more in the comments of that post about different options that we can explore. One thing is that one solution is if the physical store, if we found a forever home where, okay, I should also preface this by saying we just bought a building in Johnstown, so we're not in the position to buy another building at this moment. With the current information that we have, there it's not going to happen. But one of the options is if we bought a building and had somebody who rented some space out in it, um, that would offset the mortgage, and we would have an asset that we could then eventually draw an income from. If we ever decided to retire, in the store, and we decided to close the store completely, we could still rent the space out, so we would still make money off of that. So that's one option. And also, we've spent I think over 120,000 in rent since we've been open, and it's actually probably more than that because that's the last time I figured it out. It was about that, and that was a while ago. So, we're constantly paying for rent. So, one of the things that would be good would be to invest in real estate and try to get a forever home. Now, the other option is to go the other direction and close the physical store and focus all of our attention on our online business because that's actually what's sustaining us now. The physical store um, makes some money, but it does not make enough that if we only had the online or the physical store, we could not survive off of only the physical store at this point, not without changing something dramatically. Um, and those are options. Within those options are options like one of the stores in town, they were having a hard time of it, so they started doing consignment in their store and renting out sections of their store, like small little stands within their store, and that helped them keep going. So, I don't know what the option is. I do know that with the physical location, sometimes it's difficult to focus on, it takes away from doing stuff online. And so, like, there are hours when William has to be at the store, um, and it's not easy to like have like edit a video if you're interrupted by somebody just looking like tire kicking you. People who are not really serious about beating or buying anything in the store. They're just out to go out and see the sights and whatever. So, and that's cool. I'm not saying anything bad about that, but it's hard when you're trying to like do this dedicated focused work on like editing a video, and then you have to like stop and greet people and stuff like that. So, I'm just being honest about things. Now, the other kind of other option is just to kind of keep going and hope that something changes. And I don't know. I'm not one of those people who likes to kind of not future proof stuff. I get nervous when I get into a situation where I don't have options. I because that I like to be able to have autonomy over the decisions instead of having like not having the option to make decisions for myself. I don't like that. Um, so it's kind of a hard thing to do. But what we're going to do, and I have to talk to William more about this, of course, is we're going to basically keep an eye on things, keep moving forward, keep trying to fight the good fight, and work on building up our other revenue streams, including the building in Johnstown. And so, if that takes off, takes a little bit of pressure off of the numbers in the other store. Um, and, try to make it so that we're generating more income than having money going out. And right now, like at the cottage, the bills for the cottage are pretty low, but the things that need to be done to maintain the building are quite high. So I think in the long run it's a good investment, but in the short term it is a bigger financial drain. So it's one of those things. I know some of y'all that are like, whatever, I just came here to see the eyelet tutorial. But I'm just telling you about the things that we're thinking about, and hopefully to dispel some of the rumors. I saw somebody say that they're sad that we're closing. We're not actually closing, and so I just want to reiterate that. But I do also want to say that small businesses rely heavily upon their support network, and if you want to see those businesses to continue, you have to support them. And there are lots of ways of doing that. You can support them in many free ways, liking and sharing their posts, commenting on their posts with comments of 4 words or more. Um, you know, there are lots of different free ways that you can help support your favorite small businesses. There are also, but the thing is also is that there is a financial component, and if we can't generate enough money from sales, then we have to stop. And I don't know if we'll ever truly stop. I mean, if we sold the business, that'd be one thing, but like I don't think anybody would hire me at this point. So so I'm cracking myself up, y'all. Um, but yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, I just wanted to be honest and transparent with all of you, because I know that sometimes the rumor mill can like distort things and change things, and people, start talking, and the next thing you know, it's like wildly different than from the reality. So I did not want you all to get kind of swept up in that. So yes. I see a couple people have commented. Karen said, "Thanks for your honesty, Andrew. We will support whatever decision you guys make." Well, thank you. Yeah, we're gonna still keep going, still keep plugging away. The store is really important to us, and for us, it would be super sad if the physical store had to close. I don't think the online store is at risk because um, it's doing it's doing remarkably better than when we first started. I don't know if you all do this or not, but what we do is we call develop metrics. So what we do is we compare cost of goods, and we look at how much money we spend and how much money we get back, and we can track that from year to year, quarter to quarter, month to month, week to week, day to day, and we can then build on that. So a part of that is understanding the ebb and flow of our business so that we can anticipate things better. Like sometimes you never know what's going to be the thing that kind of pushes your business. And so you have to pay attention to your business and your numbers and your customers and their needs and different things like that. So anyways, I digress. Michelle says, what if you made more of your in-store items online, but they get credited in store? That's kind of like robbing Peter to pay Paul. So then at that point, why don't you just have an online store only? Is basically that's what that is. So that sounds, it's like it's it's one of those things where that's you can spin it like that and make it seem like that, but at the end of the day, the store has to make a certain amount, otherwise it's not a viable business on its own. I don't know how it sounds kind of weird, but in the short run, you can do that for cash flow. But in the long run, if something is like constantly draining resources and not fulfilling its obligations, then you have to, either do something else or think of a new solution. So yeah. Lorraine says, it would be sad if you had to close your store. Yeah, I think it would be. I think William and I have talked about it. When the pandemic first hit and we were locked down, we couldn't even go outside. We couldn't even go to the store to like get stuff to fulfill the orders. We talked about it because we didn't know how things would go. And it was really, really difficult. I think now that we've had a little bit of time and clarity, it wouldn't be as hard. I think part of why it was so important for us is that it was kind of the way that we started to get to know our community and set down roots. It's how we know most of the people that we know in town, actually, is through the store. So most of the people that we know in southwestern Pennsylvania is from the store. Either they've come in the store, they heard of the store, or they know us as store owners. So it would be really hard to do that. But again, I don't know how things are going to go. I speak like I have so much certainty about how things are going to go, but at the end of the day, I don't actually know what's going to happen. So if, say, the economy changes and people start coming out more, then certainly we'll keep the store going, the physical store going, to meet those demands. Doesn't mean that we should explore other towns. Maybe. I don't know. If moving to a less expensive area or a place that has more critical mass, if that would change it's kind of like recipes. You have to tweak the recipes and get it just right to do the thing you want. And even then, sometimes it doesn't always work out. One year, in 2018, they did a complete renovation of the Diamond, which is kind of this little park that is in the very center of town. And they rerouted traffic and they blocked off a bunch of things, and there were heavy machinery around, and a lot of the sidewalks were closed, and there was no real help that we could get from any kind of, with insurance. There's a thing called disruption of business, and you can apply for that. But since we were still technically able to conduct a business, it they were like, well, no, because you're still open and still able to draw money. So no, you can't get a disruption of business because you're still open. Um, so that we were it was really hard, you know. And in 2018, I ended up having to freelance for a bunch of my friends in the industry, and I used to travel and do shows for them, and to bring in extra money for the business. And William, I don't remember exactly when he went back to his other job, um, but they asked him to come back, and it kind of worked out timing wise because it gave a little bit more of a foundation and certainty for his business. So, or for our business and our livelihood. So there wasn't as much of a drain when you knew that XYZ amount of money was coming in every 2 weeks. So we're super thankful for that. But I think it's one of those things where you just never know what's going to happen. And so we also, I can't remember what it was exactly, but we moved the store at some point, and I think it might have been also 2018 or maybe 2019. Um, and people thought we had closed the store, and I was like, "No, no, we didn't close the store. We just moved down the street." And people they were like freaking out, and they're like, "I thought you were closed, so I just never went." And I was like, we're on. We tell people stuff online, maybe too much stuff online. Um, Bonnie says, I sympathize with you guys. We have had to reinvent ourselves several times, but everything happens for a reason. We have struggled and somehow everything just shifted. We are doing much better today, but being self-employed has been a good choice for us. Yeah, I think when you're self-employed, you're kind of I think when you're self-employed, it is a little bit um it's harder, because if something goes wrong, at the end of the day, you're responsible for it. You're responsible for everything. So if something happens in the store, then we're responsible for it. So um and it's not always easy, but I make it sound also like doom and gloom, but at the same time, I have to say that we're incredibly fortunate to be able to do what we do. It's provided us with a life that I'm very proud of, that I'm happy to have lived. And, I don't know, not everybody is able to say that. I have friends and they say, they tell me that they hate their life and they hate their job and they hate what they do. But they do it because they have some kind of security. And sometimes we don't have the same kind of security as, having a regular job would provide. But at the same time, I love what we do. There are some frustrations along the way, as with all things. And it's like what they say, like the best, I can't remember exactly the proverb, but say that they said the best way to make God laugh is to make a plan. Um, and sometimes I felt that deep in my bones, where we've made all these big plans and then it kind of just like wah wah. So there are trade-offs with everything. I talked with somebody recently, and he had expressed that his job is not his life. And I get that. There were times in my life that I worked for other people, and I did not that was not my life. I worked really hard for them and I did my best, and I wanted with my whole heart for their businesses to succeed, but it wasn't mine. And even though I had wanted, I am one of those people that when I work on something, I get really deeply invested in it and like emotionally tied to it. And so I want whatever project that I'm working on to be successful. And so even though uh, it wasn't my life necessarily, I did want it to succeed, but I understood what he was saying, where he just goes to work so that he can afford to do the things that do make him happy. Um, and for me, it's a little bit different in the sense that I am my most happy when I'm making things and when I'm helping inspire people and be creative. And um, so what I do to earn a living is very much tied to the things that I'm passionate about. So it's a little bit of a different situation. And I understand both sides of that. Sometimes I fantasize about working for somebody else and having like health insurance and things like that. And they fantasize about being an artist and living the being their own boss, and so it's kind of a grass is greener on the other side kind of situation. Lena says, once you get out of a habit of doing something, it's really difficult to get back in the habit. This is true of all patterns, like driving a certain way through town. Yeah, and I think that definitely has to do with retail consumer psychology. Once you're out of you're used to ordering stuff online, and you're used to getting Uber Eats and stuff like that, it's harder to go back to the way things used to be. And so we've always been in this thing. It's like adapt or adapt or die kind of situation. So, anyways, I'm going off topic way, 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 way far. Like, if this was a topic, it went like way over there. But at least y'all know what I'm thinking about and what William and I have been discussing. I do want to say that if anything ever does happen, we would tell our support system first, because you all are the ones who keep us going. So it wouldn't be kind of just this random, oh, hey, by the way. So, yeah, I hope y'all know that if anything ever changed, we would all keep you all in the loop. Because y'all are the ones that are helping keep this creative castle afloat. Teresa's joining. Harry's watching. Hello, everyone. All right. So, with that being said, if I did not make you all shed the big tears and start shivering nervously, hopefully I didn't do that. I don't know why you would, but if you did, I hope I didn't have that effect. But so we're going to jump into our project. I will remind you all that if you all like the Saturday tutorials, please do make sure you like them and that you comment on them. It helps if the comments are 4 words or more, and that you share them. It helps us. We draw a mild passive income from it, that we hope to, build and become more robust. And hopefully you all get stuff out of it too. So, yes. And then also, I wanted to say that, I also wanted to say thank you so much for everything. We could not be able to do this without all of you out there. So I just wanted to say thank you again. I know sometimes I can sound like a little broken record, but I really do genuinely in a heartfelt way, appreciate all of you out there. So thank you so much. All right, so let's flip this around and then we'll get to the tutorial so that y'all are not gonna pull your hair out and then you end up looking like me. So I'm gonna try to aim it so you don't get blinded, because there's an overhead light now. Oh, I have more options now. All right, so let me try and play with something real quick. All right, so this is the back camera, back ultra wide. That's too wide, y'all. Desk camera, that looks kind of cool. That's actually kind of neat. Um, Back dual wide camera. That's not it. Back triple camera. I don't know about that. This back camera. All right. So here you go. Bonnie says, thank you as well. We appreciate your kindness and free tutorials. I like to do them, like everything. I don't know how long we can keep doing them. One of the things that helps us is do the tutorials is the Patreon. That gives us a little bit of a extra boost, and we're able to provide free content, because we do have supporters that pay monthly. So just so you know, y'all can thank the Patreons for keeping this going, because that is one of the ways that this keeps going. All right. All right. So Amanda asked if there was a way to incorporate eyelets into one's work, and specifically with leather and then from metal. So I got this cool gold leather. Y'all know that I love gold. Um, and I have this thing called a Sizzix, excuse me. And that's kind of its own thing, but it cuts these strips. And now those strips can then be used to make kind of cuffs, or like they don't go all the way around. So you kind of have to either put eyelets in here and then some chain with a closure, or have a really small wrist. But when I got this, I was like, is this for like the child? Because it does not fit me. Um, but anyway, so I got this and I cut this out. But if you don't have one of those, you can still cut out these strips of leather. And if you wanted to use this in a way, you can always do it by creating the eyelets, and then using this as a either hang stuff off of this or use it in a design. I've used it a couple different times. I don't know if I have the samples, but I might have that sample. Hold on one second, because I might have a sample that you can see what it actually looks like instead of me just like mentally talking you through it. Well, I do have it. And I also wanted to add and build upon what Lennis had said, where when you become out of habit, then it becomes harder to get back into things. The same thing could be said for us, because, we've been focusing all of our attention, or most of our attention, on building the online store and building our online presence. So when we talk about like the physical store and stuff, we also have to get back into the habit of offering um, more programming for our physical store as well to get more people in. I think one of the reasons why we were kind of gut punched is that it took us a long time to build up our in-store or brick and mortar support system. And so when that kind of went away, we had to shift really quickly. But I also wanted to say that, like, we do have to work harder on building that back up. And so that's where the real kind of question becomes, because we don't currently have enough bandwidth to do everything that we want to do. But at the same time, do we go back and start doing more in-store programming? Because before, in the very beginning, when we started doing in-store programming, like in-store classes and different things like that, sometimes we wouldn't get anybody sign up. So it took a while to build that. All right, so this is an example of one of those kind of like strap ideas that you can use this as a point of connection. So if you use this as kind of like the focal, or even off to the side, you can have that and it can be a part of your design, or you can have it be like a pendant. This one's a little bit longer, but you can. Bonnie asked if we have a loyalty program in our store. We've had those in the past, but it became kind of a headache to do, because if you don't report stuff um, on okay, so basically, if you offer monetary compensation of certain kinds, and you have to do it and report it before the end of a year, or you record a loss. So if you do, I mean, it's one of those things where we've tried it before, and it didn't really do super well, and it was more work than it was kind of worth. And then, of course, when people were trying to abuse it, then that was another kind of a headache issue. But I mean, we've been in business for 12 years, so we've tried a lot of different things. So, um, a lot of it is we can try different things, but if the economy or the customer base isn't there, then we're kind of in a you know we're in that same kind of thing that I was talking about earlier, where if it doesn't work if it doesn't really work, then it just is then you have to make decisions based on the information. Anyways, so yeah, so if you wanted to use this as a focal, you could definitely use this as a focal. You could paint this. There are some wonderful paints out there that are available to paint leather. There's this stuff called Angelus. That's what I use to paint my shoes. Not too long ago, I painted my shoes gold, and I use this paint called Angelus. I will say that if they say use the sealer on top, use the sealer on top, because I did not use the sealer on top. And by the end of the weekend, and I mean, they got pretty heavy duty wear because I was walking around in them a lot, and they were getting a lot of motion. The paint cracked in any of those creases. So, yeah, I don't. So if you do use that Angelus, make sure you seal it if you have it in a kind of high motion area. But with this also, if you use the different sizes of things, you can paint on it, vintage patina paints, or whatever the new one is called. Those work really well also in painting on leather. acrylic paint does work. You just have to make sure that you either seal it or that you make sure that you work the surface so that it will accept the paint. Because sometimes what they'll do with some leathers is they'll put like a plasticky spray film on top, and the plastic on plastic is not ideal. So you can just peel it off, and if it gets wet at all, it will start to curdle, and then it will just like scrape off. So it's always best, if you are concerned about that, do a test sample, especially if there's something that you're going to sell or give to somebody else. Do a test sample on your purse on that particular product, and see how it works and test out the durability. Because I would like to say, oh, this works for certain and this doesn't work and this and that. But ultimately, it really depends on what you have and what you're working with. So just keep that in mind, if you're talking about painting on leather. Um, but if you wanted to do that, it is an option. I think it's a really cool thing. You can do this with like medicine bag if you had like a bigger sheet and you folded it over and you did rivets or eyelets along the end. You can sew up the sides, kind of imagine it like this, but you can sew up the sides with the stitching, and uh, and that's one of the things you can do. Um, so I know that a lot of people are giving suggestions on things we can do to help the physical store. And what I definitely appreciate it, I'm not necessarily going to respond to them anymore. And I hate to say that, but I really would like to get through the tutorial so that it's kind of coherent, more coherent. And I know that may sound not super appreciative, but I'm just gonna have to say that because um, otherwise it's gonna be super convoluted, and people are gonna be like, I just wanted to know how to do this one thing, and then I have to wade through his their business history for 12 years, kind of thing. All right. So anyway, if you wanted to do that, you could certainly do it. And you can stitch up the sides by taking a flat piece, like a rectangle, folding it over, and then doing eyelets along the sides, and then taking either wax linen or something that's supple, and then stitching it. And you can stitch it however you want to. You can do a little cross on the sides, and that keeps it pretty close. This is not going to be a bag that will, if you have little bits and crumbles, it's going to fall out the sides. So you do have to make sure that whatever you put in the bag is going to stay in the bag. So if you do have little bits and crumbles, put it in the smaller bag that gets stuffed into the bigger bag. I don't know, but you don't want to be like the person that leaves a little trail of crumbles wherever you go. So, if you do want to make those bags and you want to do like a tutorial on that, just let me know and we can go in and do that. All right. But for today, I'm just going to show you the way of making that. I got this really cool thing called a crocodile. I like this a lot. I think I got this on eBay. Um, but these were designed and made for the scrapbooking industry. And the cool thing about this product, it was made by We Are Memory Keepers, is that there are two hole punches, and they have two different sizes. There's one that's slightly larger, and there's one that's slightly smaller. Depending on how you adjust this, if you had something where you wanted the holes to land in the same place and you had the same material and you wanted that over and over, you can adjust this, and it will, like if your piece wood or whatever was this thick and you wanted the holes to be in the same place every time, you just adjust this and tighten the screw down and put that in, and then it would go against that thing where it would stop, then you would just punch. So they have this. Depending on the size of the eyelet that you're setting, you'll have to adjust your closing, your flaring mechanism here on the tip. And how you do that is you pull this up and then you twist it around. So this would be for the smaller eyelet, and then this would be for the larger eyelet. And then you can adjust how you want that to flare depending on which one you pick. So if you want it to flare a little bit more, I think you could use number 4. Number 4, I think. We're just going to do number 3, just kind of in the middle there. And then you close that up by snapping that back into place. All right. So this is a really handy dandy tool. I like to use it. It's designed for paper crafting, but it was originally designed for really thick cardstock. So you can do thin wood. So if it's like a balsa wood, you could do balsa wood. I wouldn't, there is a chance of cracking. It works on leather, and it also works on thin gauge metal. And I've used this on 24 gauge, but you have to make it. I think it would wear it out if I just use this for metal. But if you use for metal, you can use a drill bit or a hole punch and then remount the holes a little bit more, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So I have this crocodile, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to find where I want the hole. If I am super specific about where I want that hole, I can always put a dot on here like so. Make sure that I'm using the right size that I want to use. Line that up. Can you see that like a bullseye? And then press. And then it's got one of those little dangling chads, but you can take and can trim anything that comes out extra and then do it like that. So there you go. And then what you do is you can layer this up. This is a fastening where it means it's like I'm holding it together eyelet. Now, what this is you can have 2 options where you can put this together, and depending on the thickness, if you get it really thick, then it's going to be harder because the metal won't want to go over it. But if it's too thin, it's going to also have problems because you are going to have issues with it not having enough material to kind of grab onto. So you kind of have to get it just right. Now, I will say, if you have a material that is subject to a lot of fraying or coming apart because it's like woven, what you can do is take a little bit of fabric glue or something like that and dab it over there. Make your mark of where you want to put your hole. Dab that around the hole and then punch it when it's dry, and that will kind of seal up any of those kind of threads that could come apart, because you don't want to get something like a woven material and then put one of these eyelets in and then just pull, and then it would just pull right out. So you do want it to have a little bit of security when you're putting that in. Yeah, so the next thing you do is you line this up where this kind of protrusion is at the bottom. You put that over the cupped edge, and then you put that on the top right there, and then you squeeze, and that will help flare out the metal and keep it so that it will keep it shut on here by folding and rolling over the edge. I don't know if you can see that or not. Now, another thing is if you have a synthetic material, which this is leather, so I don't recommend this, but if you have a synthetic material, you can get a lighter and lightly pass it, and any of those threads will get burnt up. Now, if you do this with leather, it will smell terrible in your house, and then you're gonna be like, why did he do that to me? Just keep that in mind. But if you wanted to, you can do this multiple times, and they come in different metals. These are kind of a base metal, so I'm guessing some kind of aluminum. I don't know exactly what these are made of, but they're a very soft metal that are malleable, and they have little tiny, I don't know if you can see that or not, but they have tiny little cuts around the rims of these eyelets so that when the metal flares out, it will do so in kind of an organized fashion. If it didn't have those little cuts and you did it too aggressively, your metal could split and it would kind of create a less than pretty kind of look. So just keep that in mind about that. So the crop dial is super useful. If William is watching, hopefully he'll drop an affiliate link in there. I can do that after the video is turned off. I don't know if they even make these still, but I love them, and I hope that they continue to make them because it's a nice heavy duty kind of thing. They also make, if you don't have one of these, they make a punch that is designed for leather, and it's called a leather punch. We sell those in the store, and it's its own thing. It's kind of like a wheel that has like spokes that come out, and then you adjust it to the size you want, and you punch it like that. But then when you go to set your eyelet, you kind of also have to then have an eyelet setter. And usually that's like a little round or a disc of steel. And then you have a punch that you use to flare it out. And that's like the old school way of punching and setting eyelets in leather. Amanda Cesara, the eyelets multi-purpose. I see some in jewelry section and some in scrapbooking section, and they seem to look the same. Well, maybe. I don't know what exactly you're looking at, but some of them are harder metals. And depending on what you use, it will change that. So if you're working with like metal and you want a harder metal, like say you can make your very own eyelets also. You don't have to buy pre-made eyelets. You can make your own eyelets with tubing. You could actually make your own eyelets from sheet metal. I don't necessarily recommend it because it's kind of a pain in the butt to make tubing. And you also will have a seam unless you have some very expensive equipment that I don't have. But you'll also have a seam. So you can make your very own from sheet metal. However, if you are going to make your own, you might as well make them out of tubing. And then if you don't want to go through the hassle of that, they do sell eyelets that come pre-prepared. And what I mean by pre-prepared is that it's not just a tube of metal, but it has one flared side. So it makes it so much easier. If you don't, you kind of have to do a process where you take the eyelet and you put it in on some wood, and then you dome it out or you flare it out on one side before you even get started. And you have to make sure the metal's annealed, and there's some very kind of persnickety things that you have to do to make sure that it will be able to be manipulated. But they sell eyelets already made, and they're like 5 cents a piece. And I think that that's way easier than having to make your own. You know, some people, they like to make everything their own from scratch. And you can definitely 100% to do that, but it's like, why? I mean, unless you're like emotionally attached to the process of having to do every single thing, like mining the metal from the earth and smelting it down and alloying it, then it's kind of like, I don't, it's like, what, at what step do you buy ready made, and at what step do you do handmade? A lot of times I used to do stuff handmade style because I didn't have the equipment to do anything other than that. So as I've been doing this longer and longer, I've gotten more and more tools, and that has opened up things for me. And also, if you don't have stuff, you can make your own things. Like, I'm going to show you a process of flaring these eyelets out, and you may not have the dapping punches. And if you don't have the dapping punches, you can kind of skirt around that by filing down and polishing a nail and making your own punch. You know, the dapping punches are relatively inexpensive, but you know, everybody has different budgets. So you can do a lot with very little. And I don't want anybody to think that they can't do the things that they want to do because they don't have money. There's always a way of doing things. Um, and sometimes it's more work, and sometimes, you know, you have to put in a little bit more sweat equity. But if you don't have the cash flow to do it, then that's, you know, that's what you got to do, or you don't do it, or you don't do it. So there you go. All right. So these eyelets I got from a store that's not around anymore, but it's called Objects and Elements. But if you look around, if you look for jewelry eyelets, it should come up. Now I cut a piece of textured copper. I made this kind of trapezoid shape. And normally I would do this on the jeweler's bench because I have a bench pin, and that can help support my work. But I'm just going to file down some of the edges. Now, one of the very, very important things is that your hole that you drill is very snug to the eyelet. If there is a great big space in between, it's going to not work very well, and it's going to be kind of, and when you fold it over, it'll be Wonkadoodle City, and it will lean over to one side and it will look kind of weird. So it's super important that you pick an eyelet that matches your drill bit, or you get a drill bit that matches your eyelet, or you have one that's kind of like in the middle, and then you can ream this out. So if you don't have exactly that that size, what you can do is, and this is what I did because I didn't have a bit that was exactly this size, but I had this, and then I had a bit going, and then I kind of just turned it on a side. So it's removing material from the edges, and just rotated it around like this, and it reamed out that hole a little bit more. And you have to do it a little at a time to make sure that you don't take off too much, but you do it a little bit at a time, and then it will fit this nice and tight and snug. So that's super important. So I'm going to continue to file. Now, when you do drill a hole or punch a hole, there will be a thing what's called a burr. And that's the displacement of metal. And generally speaking, it's sharp and kind of jagged and not ideal. It's super, super duper important that you remove this burr. Otherwise, guess what's going to happen? When you go to fold over your metal on your eyelet, if there's a big piece of metal sticking up from a burr, that's going to get in the way of your eyelet from being able to fold over smoothly. So if you want that to be a really beautiful and clean eyelet, then it's super important that you file down your burrs. You can use sanding discs. If you have a Fordham or a Dremel tool, you can get what's called a sanding disc, and it goes zoop, and it's done. You can also use it if you have a jewel tool. I want a jewel tool. You can use that, and I'll get rid of that burr. There's also a wheel that you can get for a polishing wheel. It's called a deburring wheel, very specifically named, and you can use those to get rid of those burrs in a flash. Now, if you are doing one or two of these, I wouldn't get that business because it's like thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and those deburring wheels are not inexpensive. So if you're doing like one or two or even 10, I would say just use your file and then use a little bit of sandpaper and call it a day. All right. So this is when you're filing, the file removes metal on the push. So you don't see me going back and forth like this, like how some people do it now. For one thing, it makes a terrible, terrible sound. But also, because of the way that the files are cut, you're only getting really removal of material when you push it because of the way that it's cut. Now, if you have a diamond file, you can go back and forth. It's just easier when you have built habits into your you build those muscle memories of removing material only on the push. Then when you get the diamond coated ones that are not done on a specific kind of angle, cut on a specific angle, then you can then it messes with your brain. So I would recommend doing this on a bench pin, and if you have a bench pin, put a little cut into your bench pin, and then that way this sits in there in that little cut, and it doesn't move. The way that I'm doing it, and I'm bracing my hand while I'm doing it, I'm getting some removal, but if I had this propped in a bench pin, I would get way more metal removing using this file. Now, when you're picking your files, they come in different grits, just like sandpaper. So they have coarse, fine, medium, and you kind of have to find the one that works best for you. Of course, I like to collect them all like Pokemon, and I like to have them all. So if you also like to have them all, then you get yourself some files. The files that I was recommended when I was starting was Nicholson files, especially if you can get well-maintained old Nicholson files. However, people have learned that you can buy those. You used to be able to buy those files very inexpensively, and they were good tool steel. So a lot of knife makers buy up files, and they use the metal in the files to make knives, and it's called stock removal for a lot of it. And so they have really good steel and the old Nicholson files. So they're getting a little bit harder and harder to find. So I just kind of have what I can afford. I don't have any super duper fancy files yet. All right, so I have filed off all of the burrs on here. I do see when I examine that there is a little something in there. If you do have a diamond bit, you can go in there and just tweak it a little bit and get some of that off. Now, you can also take like a shish kebab skewer and run that back and forth. And you have to pick a shish kebab skewer that you're not emotionally attached to. And I know that's a weird statement because you're like, how come you be emotionally attached to a shish kebab skewer? But you know, I used to have one that's like that I used as a sculpting tool, and I used it for a lot of stuff. And somebody was in a workshop and then just snapped it in half, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I use that like every single day, and now it's like ruined, but whatever. So use one that you're not attached to, and you can rub that in and out, and that will also, the burrs will catch on the wood, and it will cause that to go one of two ways. So anyways, there you go. All right, so you've got your metal piece, you've drilled your hole, and you want to make sure that, like I said earlier, the hole is nice and tight to your eyelet. I'm going to get one of these eyelets out. If you need to make your hole larger, you can always file out that thing or grind it out, but you want to make sure that it goes in there nice and tight. Like that. So there's no movement on this. It does not move. It's nice and tight. Now, so here's the thing. If I do this straight on this steel bench block, you all know what's going to happen, right? This metal is not going to stand out like that cute little eyelet anymore. It's going to get pressed flat. Now, if you do not care about that, then don't worry about this. You can go directly onto the steel and hammer away and you'll be fine. If you want that to stay kind of domed and kind of raised, because can you see that? How it's kind of raised like that? See how it's kind of like swole up? If you want it to remain swole up, that's a very technical term, y'all. If you want that business to remain all swole up like that, like a bee bit it, stung it, then you have to do something. We're not putting this against the steel. So I'm gonna try this with a popsicle stick. I don't know if it's actually gonna work or not. But what that's going to do is the wood of the popsicle stick is going to conform to the swole upness of that eyelet. And then it's going to, you're not going to get, it won't be super flat. If you do this on the steel, it's going to be super flat. But if you have wood in between, it's going to, it's not going to flatten it the same way as working on the steel. Now, what I am going to do is there is a set. This is doming block punch set. And I'm going to use that. Bonnie says, could you put a piece of felt on it? Yeah, if the felt's thick enough. I like wood because it will create an impression and then it won't move around a lot. If you have an absorbent material that won't get conform to the shape. Yeah, if you're going to work on wood, don't pick your grandma's table that's a wooden table, this heirloom to use. Pick a piece of scrap wood that you don't care about or like a popsicle stick and use that. What will happen is, you'll see it, there'll be an impression left over from when I'm hammering. And the nice thing about that impression is that it holds the work in place and you don't get it going all around the countryside. Right. So this is a set. This one we use in the classes at the store for a long time. So some of these are really chewed up. But you can also polish these And in my abundant spare time, I have goals of one day polishing these all nice and smooth and mirror finish, but they're kind of chewed up. But that doesn't really matter for our purposes. But if you want them to be like for raising or for chasing in repoussé kind of work, you will definitely want to have a more polished surface so that the marks that are in the metal don't get telegraphed to the metal that you're working on. Now, one of the reasons why this got chewed up is that this was used in a hole that this was not supposed to be for. So the steel is what caused that ring right there. It's not the metal that caused the copper or whatever caused this. It was this thing, the doming block. So if you use a size that's too big for the hole, it's going to mark up your punch set. So just keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to pick a small punch for myself to use. You want to start off smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to test this. And I don't want this to go through the hole. So this punch is smaller than, well, actually it's not. This is the smallish punch size. And I'm just going to get this. I'm going to lightly tap. And I tapped it all the way through. And then I'm going to move up to the next size. And I'm going to hold this perpendicular, embracing it with my pinky, my ring finger, I have this like this. So there's embracing my hand here underneath. I don't know if you can see that. I'm bracing my hand on there. And this is straight up and down perpendicular to my bench surface. And I have, if you can see that, I've got multiple points of connection so that it's not super wavy gravy style. I'm just going to lightly tap. I'm also going to lightly rotate as I hit, and that will help flare this out. Now this hammer is just like my chewed up hammer that I use. I don't really care about it. If you wanted to be like super particular about it, you can see I did a mistake where, see that one lip? I got a little bit overzealous with my rotating, and it pushed that down on one side. It's not the end of the world, but it's also not ideal. So you can see this left an impression. So what I'm going to do is I just line that up with that impression, and then it's not going to move everywhere. So I'm going to get this, and then I'm just going to hit it harder. And so flare that out a little bit. And you want your piece to, your eyelet to only stick up about 1 millimeter over the surface of the metal. If it's too high, you can file it down, and then you have less metal to kind of flare out. Now, if you did if you push this down and it pushed the metal lip over on one part of this more than another, you can adjust the angle of your punch and also work the side that's up, so you're not constantly working it. You want this to be an even the metal to fold over evenly. All right. And then I'm going to move up to the next size. That's when we're going to start getting real serious. Maybe. It's still a little bit wonkadoodle. Part of that is because of this camera. I don't want to actually hit my phone. Okay. Once you get that kind of set up where you're not going to accidentally hit your phone, and you can move up to the size and then hit it so that it flares out more. Now you can also use the peen on the back, and that will help flare out the metal also. I'm just using kind of glancing blows to get it to form where I want it to form. And I'm just going around it. And if that needs to be straightened out at all, I can always take and punch it on the back side too. And that way you get that kind of nice, kind of flared, that kind of nice end there. See how that is? It sticks up nice. It's not super flat. And then the back is round all the way around. So that adds a nice like decorative finish. If you wanted to, you can use these eyelets like rivets. So if you want to do kinetic things that have moving parts, you can use one. If you use two, it's going to stay put. But if you want to have movement, say you have a bird, I don't know, I don't have any paper. Well, let's see. No, that's a receipt. So say, all right. So we're going to use the back of this, and you're probably, oh, here we go. So I'm going to move this out of the way. So if you have a bird shape, say you have a bird, and then the tail comes out, and you want that, and you want a wing. So one idea you could do is set an eyelet here decoratively, like how we did this. And then another idea is to cut a wing shape out like that, drill a hole here, drill a hole here, and then you can sandwich the metal in between, and this will create a wing, and then this will be moving. So because there's one eyelet slash rivet, it can move. Now, if you don't want this to move and you want this to stay put and not move at all, you would drill two holes, and that it would stay in place because it's not going to have, this is a pit, becomes a pivot with just one. But if you have two, it's going to be locked in place. So, and I probably would put this like this if I wanted to, instead of the other way. So that's just a design idea for you. You can also, if you want, if you take the metal and you solder this metal, you can form a loop on both sides of the piece of metal, solder here and here, or flare it out and punch a hole or whatever. And depends if you want to have like a hot connection or cold connection or whatever, and take 2 pieces of whatever, and then put this in between here, put the hole here, and then put that in there and sandwich this kind of this loop in between these 2 pieces. And then when you flare that out, this one also does not have to be as close as on the end pieces. So your sandwich, basically the bread of your piece has to be really tight with a hole. But if this is loose, it doesn't really matter as long as it's in between this slice of bread and this slice of bread, if that makes sense. So you can have, that can be sandwiched in between, and you can use that if you want to have a bail that sits up higher, or if you want it to be a different metal. It's a way of, having a different point of connection. You can also use this eyelet idea with glass. If you do work with glass, I highly, 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 highly recommend putting some safety glasses on, because one false blow and that can blow up and shatter in your eyeball hole. And you don't want that to happen. So there you go. Eyelets with leather using the crocodile, and eyelets using a hammer. And yeah, so if you want to see one of the things that I've been working on, I've really been into pearls lately, and I need to clean this off. And it's so super heavy, but it's not. It's mostly for looking. It's not necessarily a wearing piece because it's heavy duty, y'all. So I love pearls, and I wrote this story about my mom showing me this really crazy pearl when I was young, and she would tell me stories about her childhood when she showed me this pearl. And so I've always been kind of fascinated with pearls. So I'm making a piece that I showed last week or the week before, one of those weeks, about how to make these pearl clusters. And I have this idea of making kind of like these really crazy pearl clusters going off of this so that they're nice and big. But what I did is I made this bezel, and I still need to polish things up. And get this nice and looking good. But I've made this on a slider so it can be on this like bigger, if I have a pearl necklace come through there. And I wrote this quote, a Maya Angelou quote. It says, "If one has courage, nothing can dim the light which shines from within." And it kind of reminds me of this Felides quote about how within the heart shines a light. But anyway, so I know that's a little bit hokey dokey, but that's all right. So I created this, and I think it's pretty cool. I embedded some different pearls into an epoxy, and this is my profile. And I use epoxy putty to kind of to stick everything in, and then created this kind of collage or assemblage of different pearls that I had. And I didn't want them to be all like one level, so I had them stick up. And then from the side, it looks like almost like a landscape or something. But then when you look at it like this, you can kind of see that background there. Anyways, so I'm going to have that, and then there'll be those pearl clusters, and then that will be this piece. What do y'all think? It is heavy duty, though. I'm not going to lie. I was like, whew, that's heavy. That's not, you're going to need a heavy necklace for that business. I do have to clean this up, though, because I put some mica powders onto the epoxy putty before it could set, so that it would give that kind of pearlescent luster. And the more I kind of rub that powder away, I use different color pearls, so you can kind of see that a little bit more when I wipe away the excess. But I do need to get in there with a mild soap and some warm water and get the excess off. Now, if you have pearls, if you have citrus-based hand cleansers, make sure that you take them off or you don't use them on, because even if it's a mild citric acid, it can eat the surface of the pearls and dissolve it. So just so you know, in case you have that grapefruit hand soap that you got at the Bed Bath and Body Works or whatever it's called, um, then just make sure you don't, because it can mess up your pearls and make them dull looking. Michelle says your next museum piece. It's gorgeous. That's the plan, yo. I'm doing these more kind of conceptual pieces so that I can start showing in museums some more. I just talked with them and they asked me to speak again. This time it's going to be on a Zoom call. So whenever that comes out, I'll be sure to share that information, so that if you did not get enough of me talking about my other stuff before, then you can certainly get full up on me talking about it even more. All right. So I kind of have a little bit of regret, and I might do a variation on this piece. But what I wanted to do, and I'm gonna tell you all because we're tight like that. But I originally had this idea of having like some bales here. I cannot heat this again, so I can't solder anything on. And there's not enough meat on here to do a cold connection unless I did some weird prongs or whatever. But originally, I kind of had this idea of putting these big Baroque pearls coming off of this and kind of dangling down. I don't know if y'all know that necklace. It's really popular. It was worn by Anne Boleyn, who's the wife of Henry VIII, and she had a bee, and it had pearls kind of dangling off of it. And if you watch that show Ugly Betty, she is wearing kind of a jewelry or a necklace inspired by that Anne Boleyn piece. And so, and instead of the bee referencing referencing Boleyn, it's supposed to be for Betty. But anyway, so I was thinking of doing something similar, but I don't know. I got kind of too happy um, filing or whatever and ended up filing off everything on the bottom. So I might redo this piece and do it a little bit differently, maybe so it's not so chunky monkey style, and then have those pearls dangling off the bottom there, so it looks kind of opulent looking. I don't know. Anyways, that's my piece that I'm working on right now. One of them. I'm proud of it. I think it turned out pretty cool. It is super heavy, but it's not going to be strung up on anything light. So, and like light and airy so that it cuts the chi off. It'll be a shorter kind of collar piece made up of those pearl clusters that I showed how to make. Um, And I had another idea about doing that where I would hang different chains that are embellished with these freshwater pearls. Um, so it looks like it's like dripping off the neck. But that's for a different reason. Anyways, so there's that. And so today we talked about a lot of stuff, but we talked about making these eyelets in leather and in metal. And also I showed you a sneak peek of the piece that I'm working on right now. All right, I'll be back tomorrow with some more things. If you do have any suggestions for things that you would like to see, I can't necessarily make any promises, but if you send those to info@allegorygallery.com, you never know. Maybe I'll be able to show it. Amanda had wanted to see the eyelets today, so I took her suggestion up and we did it. So eyelets. All right. I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. And I've got to get back home, feed those kittens, and hug on them and kiss on their little faces. So I'll see you later. Bye bye. See ya.